Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Mikhail Gorbachev, the last leader of the Soviet Union, helped end the Cold War with U.S. Presidents Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush, has died at the age of 91. We have got a lot more on his life and legacy coming up this hour here on Wake Up America. He was one of the towering figures of the late 20th century. Former Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev dying yesterday at the age of 91 of natural causes. The New York Times highlighting the mixed reactions from across the globe this morning, as did Russia correspondent Stuart Smith. Take a listen.
The reaction here in Moscow has been rather muted compared to the statements of world leaders in the West. It was clear as the media responded to his death here in Russia on Wednesday morning that there was uncertainty about how to report on it. Some news sites not even offering this story of the death of the first Soviet president as one of their main headlines.
So just to put that into perspective, let's say a former U.S. president were to pass away and a major news channel here in the U.S. didn't even cover it.
But yeah, that goes to show the President Putin is, in charge.
Firmly in charge.
The media needs to really do what he says.
It's all state-run media over there. So what Vladimir Putin says goes in Russia right now. All right, for more on this, let's welcome back in the former chairwoman of the Nevada State GOP and Newsmax contributor Amy Tarkanian, and retired Air Force Brigadier General and Deputy Military Rep to NATO Newsmax contributor Blaine Holt. Great to have you both on. General, great to see you. When you think back on Mikhail Gorbachev's legacy, it is certainly a mixed legacy. I think he was maybe the great pragmatist of the latter half of the 20th century. He knew that he had to play ball with the likes of Margaret Thatcher in England and Ronald Reagan and George Bush here in the U.S. to keep the Soviet Union from completely collapsing, which ultimately it did. What do you make of his legacy?
He's a great leader. I like the term towering figure because the triangle between Thatcher, Reagan, and Gorbachev, you can't miss any of those pieces to end the Cold War. And his growing up, he saw Stalin. He was inspired by Stalin at first, and then he started to see the lies that were coming home in World War II with Russia. And through Khrushchev, he could see what was really happening in Soviet life. He still believed in the system, but once he started to get his eyes on the West and saw how the West was prospering, he saw the disparity, and he knew that the Soviet Union could not compete with that. And so he went to work. But he mismanaged the afterlife of the Soviet Union and was held to account for that. They blamed him quite unfairly for that. And the West needed to come in to help with Russian getting caught up for Russian prosperity. But he is a great statesman, and it's tragic that Russia won't at least acknowledge that fact today.
Yeah, Amy, Gorbachev and President Putin, very different leaders. Gorbachev was even in a commercial with Pizza Hut. Take a watch.
Yeah. I'll bring it all. I'll bring it all.
Горбачев. Да благодаря ему у нас есть Pizza Hut.
За Горбачева!
За Горбачева! За Горбачева!
Sometimes nothing brings people together like a nice hot pizza from Pizza Hut.
Okay, so Amy, I just want to take you through this. So this aired in Russia, aired in the United States. This shows how popular he was here for a moment. Imagine a commercial like that with Vladimir Putin airing in the United States. But basically, Gorbachev wanted to open up the doors to the Soviet Union, the USSR, and Pizza Hut was part of that. There was a Pizza Hut in Moscow. So his legacy is mixed because you see the older gentleman in the commercial saying, no, there's too much political unrest now because of Gorby in Russia. And then the younger people are saying, yeah, but look at democracy. We've got Pizza Hut in Moscow.
You're right. Well, he wanted to be liked. He wanted to be relatable. And I think doing a American television ad like that, it definitely did both of those things. And so, you saw that was more of a sign of prosperity as well. And so if the people felt that it was prosperous or not, the fact that they were now getting an American restaurant, in their vicinity, I think was bringing hope.
Yeah. General, I want to sort of close the loop on this, today we've got a war that's now into a 7th month in Ukraine. That wouldn't have happened if Gorbachev were still leading Russia, then the USSR. The two did not like each other, certainly politically. Vladimir Putin, as we just showed you, hasn't let the state media say much about the legacy of Mikhail Gorbachev. What do you make of that?
Yeah, so Putin blames Gorbachev for letting go of something that could not be held onto. But we should look at the Gorbachev that warned us in 2014 and the West that if the Ukraine situation was mismanaged, he was very critical of the Obama administration about their political interaction with the West and Yanukovych, and warned that if this wasn't managed properly, it could spiral out of control and bring the world and Russia and the West into conflict with each other that matched the Cold War. You know, that very prophetic. We're seeing that today.
Amy, from one leader to another leader, President Biden in Pennsylvania, he spoke yesterday. He's going to address the nation tomorrow night, as well as speaking on Saturday. He's mentioned crime. He talked about guns. He has not been to the border, but he did mention fentanyl yesterday. Take a listen.
We're going to impose tougher penalties for deadly fentanyl trafficking. That's poisoning communities across this country. This is a key part of the unity agenda I'm announcing. That I announced in my State of the Union address. We can do this. We have to do this. We'll make America safer.
Amy, it's pretty easy to make America safer, perhaps closing the border, make some changes. Do you expect him to go to the border?
I don't, and that would
be the
actually.
first
But even
time,
for
right?
optics, though,
Yeah.
because it seems he's changing his tune as we go into these midterms.
It would be the only answer to this, awful crisis that we're now having to go through, and we're losing, I think you said, Rob, earlier, 300 people per day.
3 a day. It's a little over that, yeah, from fentanyl alone.
So that would be the only answer. And if they were wise, yes, they would send the president down, or at least send the vice president down, and then shut the border.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to happen.
No, I don't think so either. He's got 69 days. I think optically, Allison brings up a good point, because it would be good for the president, because now the Democrats are the party of not defunding the police, which is, again, just gaslighting the American people, who I don't think are totally tuned into the midterms yet. I think that'll happen starting next Tuesday, after Labor Day, tomorrow, September 1st. General, just about 15 seconds, but we have been talking about this war in Ukraine and covering it from all angles extensively for the last 6+ months. Ukraine did something unusual. They awarded Newsmax the Order of Merit, which is a big deal in Ukraine. They did it specifically for Greta Van Susteren after her series on the atrocities in Ukraine as a result of Vladimir Putin's invasion and the ensuing war. Your reaction to that, and the fact that Newsmax is now getting recognized by President Zelensky in Ukraine?
I think it's totally appropriate. Greta's series was absolutely incredible. And, Newsmax is well watched in Ukraine. Certainly my sources usually bring me Newsmax stories to take a look at and say, what do you think about this? But that just really speaks highly of this great team, this great organization. And I'm just happy to be a member of it. And kudos to Greta for being recognized that way. That's really just wonderful.
Appreciate that. And if you are watching in Ukraine, it's the afternoon there. We are thinking about you, and thank you so much for watching us. General, great to have you on as always. Amy, always a pleasure. We'll do it again soon. Thank you.
Great to be here. Thank you.
All right.